All right, welcome back to another edition of Playoff Trust Ratings or whatever. I still haven't come up with the title for it. But like in my Denver Nuggets video, I am going to not necessarily predict if a team's going to win a championship or not, just my feelings on trusting a particular team and their odds of going deep into the playoffs and doing that on a scale out of 10. And next up, we are doing the Golden State Warriors. Am I going to be back on my bullshit? Who knows? But this Warriors team this year has had an interesting journey, which led into trading for Jimmy Butler at the trade deadline to get Steph, that second star, more importantly, that second perimeter star, that second perimeter shot creator, because Steph was having to do everything. He was looking tired. He was looking older because he was tired, but obviously, clearly, since the trade, still one of the very best players on the planet, and that is why they ended up getting Jimmy Butler. And they extended him, and this is the core they are locked into for the next 1 to 2 years. And the question is, can they pull out? Can Stephen Curry get ring number 5? Since Jimmy Butler's debut on February 8th, the Warriors have posted some really good numbers that look like the Warriors of yesteryear. Since February 8th, the Warriors have had the best defensive rating per cleaning the glass, the 7th best offense, so they have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, which is one of like the benchmarks that I think is good for a team if they're trying to gauge whether they're a contender or not. Jimmy Butler has been everything the Warriors have needed, plus some, not just to get Steph another perimeter star that can take advantage of all the spacing and advantages Steph creates, but more importantly, the non-Steph minutes, which had been an abject disaster before Jimmy Butler arrived. The Warriors have a plus 12.8 net rating when it's Jimmy Butler-led lineups and Stephen Curry is off the floor. And, you know, in the play-in game yesterday, they used the Jimmy Butler, I believe it was Jimmy Butler, Quentin Post, Buddy Hield, Brandon Pajemski, and Gary Payton II. And that was the lineup that jump-started building that big lead against the Grizzlies. And that's going to be a nice weapon for the Warriors going into the playoffs, knowing that you could take Steph off the floor and Jimmy Butler can carry the offense for a bit. The defense has been spectacular since Jimmy Butler joined. Draymond Green took his defensive play up to another level, and I think he had been really good all year. And the one thing with the Jimmy Butler trade that also gets, under-discussed a little bit is how all the Warriors role players, which were in abundance, earlier in the year, everybody was loving the fact that the depth was giving the Warriors the ability to play like 12 guys around 25, 28 minutes, but going all out, and that's what led to their hot start to the season. But there was still a void there. Steph was having to do everything. Draymond was having to, pass guys open more and do a little bit more creation off the dribble than maybe he's comfortable doing at this stage in his career. What Jimmy Butler did was knock all the role players into their proper roles. And it's interesting because Kuminga has very obviously been taken out of the rotation. And I honestly think his days in Golden State are over. I thought the Clippers game on Sunday, I thought that was a bad sign. And then yesterday, in a play-in game in stakes, Steve Kerr went with what he thought were his best options. And that told me a lot. And I think Kuminga's days are over. But everybody else, Brandon Pajemski, his play started rebounding, and he's now looking better than he did in his rookie year because he struggled to start the year. Moses Moody finally gets playing time. Quentin Post all of a sudden becomes this second-round find where he is stretching the floor and provides the Warriors a little bit of size, a little bit of rebounding. He's a little bit slow defensively. He drops too far back in his drop coverage sometimes, but you could tell the intellect is there because he's communicating with guys, pointing guys out where their defensive assignments are. I could tell this kid is going to be really good, a really good rotational big, and he's going to get better defensively. But he has been a great find for the Warriors because he just lets it fly. And he's a big body. And yesterday, in some instances in the game, he was pulling out Zach Edey all the way out to the three-point line. You know, has a little bit of something. Like, he's intuitive. Gui Santos has started to play over Kuminga, another sign that his days are just numbered in Golden State. All the Warriors role players have just been knocked into their normal roles, and this team all of a sudden makes a lot more sense. And now, going into the playoffs and the Warriors are going to be playing the Houston Rockets, just imagine, we're still getting Warriors-Rockets series in 2025. I love the NBA. But anyway, now the Warriors are going into the playoffs with older vets, older stars, but nonetheless, Steph Curry still plays like a top 10 player and has been playing like a top 10 player since the Jimmy Butler trade. And I want to focus on Steph for a minute because this is a chance for Steph to legitimately, I think, solidify his legacy even further by getting a 5th ring. And since the Jimmy Butler trade, which has given Steph more energy to do stuff in the 4th quarter, allowing him to score a bit more, allowing him to take some breathers on some possessions, Steph averaging 27, nearly 6 assists, and nearly 4.5 rebounds a game on 40% shooting from 3 on nearly 12 attempts per game, shooting nearly 59% from 2. Like, this is some peak Steph stuff. It's not like peak Steph, but peak Steph is still a top 10 player in the NBA. And now a top 10 player of all time sees a goal in front of him for a 5th ring, and he has the proper stars now to do it. Draymond's role falls into place a little bit, and he is able to stay on the court with Jimmy Butler. Him and Jimmy Butler defensively, there's just so much IQ on that end of the floor. It's no wonder the Warriors have had the #1 defense since Jimmy Butler's debut on February 8th, which is a 30-game sample size, by the way. We need to keep that in mind. This is not some small 2-week sample where it's like, oh, you know, is this something here? No, this has been a long sample size thing. And now Curry is going into this postseason with pretty much as many weapons as you could ask for. I mean, we've all wanted to see Steph go out into the sunset being able to compete because he could still play at a high level, very obviously. And now he has it. And it's not just the fact that he got Jimmy Butler, it's the fact that he's going to get playoff Jimmy Butler. And I think those points were made very clear and loud yesterday in the play-in game, where Jimmy Butler had 38 points, Steph had 38 points, and was hitting all kinds of big shots in the 4th quarter because Jimmy Butler was manning the 2nd and 3rd quarters of that game and the 1st quarter. He had like 38 points or 33 points through the first 3 quarters. Like, Jimmy Butler was special in that game. And if you're a Warriors fan, that's the quintessential, like, oh yeah, we traded for this guy. And even in, you know, stretches where the Warriors offense was sputtering, Jimmy Butler gives the Warriors something they have never ever had before. Somebody who knows how to draw fouls and get to the free throw line. And when the Grizzlies were making some runs, taking 1-point leads, 2-point leads, cutting the lead to 5 or whatever, Jimmy Butler would draw a foul and get to the free throw line. And that's something the Warriors really haven't had in a while. And look, there's going to be concerns because they're an older team. They're going to have to go through a hellacious bracket because they're going to be facing the Houston Rockets first. And even if they beat the Rockets in that series, just how exhausted are they going to be? Because the Rockets play physical as hell. And then they're going to have to play one of the Lakers or the Timberwolves in the next round. It's going to be a tough physical path for an older team. But I think they have the proper guards. I think they have the proper stars, perimeter stars. And they still have a really great defensive player in Draymond Green. Now, the question with that is going to be, is Draymond going to struggle a little bit like he did in the 2022 playoffs, where sometimes he had to be taken out of games, especially in, the early part of the NBA Finals in 2022. But regardless, Steph and Draymond have won a lot. Jimmy Butler has carried teams to the finals, and that's just a great combination to have. And so when you're talking about playoff trust ratings, I'm not necessarily saying the Warriors are going to win the title, but I think they have every type of tool at their disposal to make a deep playoff run. And they have the track record. All their stars have the track record. Jimmy Butler hasn't won a ring yet, but he has carried teams to the finals multiple times now. And now that guy has a top 10 player of all time leading the way. Or you could go the other way and be like a top 10 player of all time that is in the twilight of his career, still really great, now finally has help in the form of a guy that carried his team to the finals twice. So when you're talking about how much do I trust this Warriors team out of 10, if I had to do a scale rating of 1 through 10, I'm going to have to go with a 8.1 out of 10. I think this team is very capable of making a deep playoff run. And this is definitely, some of it is me being higher on Steph Curry than probably a lot of people. He's my favorite player ever. But the trust is there because of the fact that him and Draymond have won 4 championships, and they have a coach who can be stubborn sometimes, but regardless, is still a really good coach. And they have Jimmy Butler, who is somebody I absolutely trust in the playoffs, even if, his run to the finals, 2 years ago, he kind of fizzled out a little bit. That's kind of an underrated thing no one talks about with Jimmy, is that towards the end of that Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics, he started to fizzle out a little bit because he was carrying the load too much. But he still takes his game up 5 notches when it comes to the playoffs, and so I trust that. I trust the role players to play in their roles. I really like this team a lot. I think they could beat quite a few teams in this Western Conference. Do I think they can get out of the conference finals? Well, that may be a different story, but am I going to be surprised if they make it out of the West and get to the finals? You think at this point I'm going to be surprised by anything 30 does? Leave a comment below and let me know what you think.